$1 million is the price a single rare, premium, hand-rolled cigar can reach in the global luxury market. Why would a product made entirely of organic matter command the same value as a high-end estate or a masterpiece of fine art? It only looks obvious that the value lies in the name, but in reality, there are no precious metals or embedded gemstones hidden within the wrapper. One can notice how the construction consists exclusively of carefully selected tobacco leaves, layered and rolled with surgical precision. But this is just the beginning. Why does a seemingly simple roll of dried vegetation require such an immense investment of time and labor? A single authentic cigar often demands the direct involvement of more than 600 pairs of hands before it ever reaches a humidor. It seems simple to harvest and dry a plant, but the process is only gaining momentum as the leaves pass through hundreds of individual highly specialized technical steps. 5 years of patient waiting is sometimes required for the tobacco to reach the necessary chemical maturity through controlled fermentation and aging. The equipment gradually monitors the humidity and temperature of the curing barns, where the leaves hang in dense, vertical rows. It is visible how the color of the lamina transforms from a vibrant green to a deep, oily brown under the influence of natural enzymes. Everything only gets more complicated as the material moves from the fields to the sorting tables. Master blenders categorize every individual leaf by its texture, size, and essential oil content to ensure a consistent combustion rate. The camera glides along the wooden workbenches of renowned workshops where rollers, known as torcedores, execute their craft with repetitive mechanical fluidness. Because even a slight deviation in the tension of the wrap will obstruct the airflow, every cigar must be a perfect aerodynamic cylinder. The process is only gaining momentum as these artisans utilize specialized steel blades to trim the tobacco with millisecond precision. Transition to the next level occurs when the finished rolls enter the final quality control phase to verify the structural integrity of the bunch. One can notice the slow, deliberate movements of the inspectors who weigh and measure each unit against a strict technical standard. Thousands of hours of agricultural labor and artisanal skill converge in this final, silent assessment of the handcrafted product. Thus, the tobacco completes its long transformation, reaching the standard ready for the final stage of global distribution. 250 million cigars. This is the staggering annual production volume that has propelled the Dominican Republic to the position of the world's largest exporter in the modern era. Why did the global center of gravity shift from the traditionally sacred grounds of Cuba to this Caribbean neighbor? It seems simple to attribute the change to political shifts or trade embargoes, but in reality, the transition was driven by a fundamental evolution in manufacturing standards. Prestigious brands like Davidoff, Arturo Fuente, and La Flor Dominicana have refined the manual labor of hand-rolling into a high-precision technical discipline. One can notice how the artisan's fingers move with surgical exactness, ensuring that every leaf is placed to provide an optimal draw and consistent burn. This level of craftsmanship has transformed the Dominican product into a contemporary benchmark that challenges the historical dominance of the Cuban industry. But this is just the beginning. The core material remains unchanged, regardless of the factory's geographical coordinates. Every unit produced is essentially a dense bundle of fermented tobacco leaves. At first glance, the cigar is perceived as a symbol of luxury and high-status refinement, which often leads to the dangerous assumption that it is a safer alternative to the common cigarette. The process is only gaining momentum. Physical data suggests a far more potent chemical composition. A single large cigar often contains between 10 and 20 times the nicotine found in a standard cigarette. It only looks obvious that the lack of deep inhalation protects the user, but in reality, toxins are absorbed directly through the oral mucosa. This path of entry ensures that nicotine reaches the bloodstream effectively, establishing a physiological addiction with regular use. The camera glides along the rising plumes of smoke, which are significantly denser and heavier than those produced by other tobacco products. Everything only gets more complicated. Long-term exposure triggers a series of measurable physiological degradations. Regular consumption elevates the statistical risk of developing malignant tumors in the mouth, larynx, and esophagus. Beyond the internal risks, the high alkaline content and heat cause visible damage to gum tissues over time. Passive observers are not exempt from these mechanical realities, as the heavy smoke particles settle in the environment, potentially inducing respiratory and lung complications for those in frequent proximity. The material leaves the production floor, transitioning into a calm stage of global distribution. Thus, the physical reality of the tobacco leaf remains constant despite the prestige of its origin. 5 9/10 inches is the minimum height a tobacco seedling must reach before it can face the open elements of the plantation. Why are the initial stages of this process confined to sealed greenhouses under hour-by-hour monitoring? At first glance, the seeds appear insignificant, being smaller than the head of a pin, but their microscopic size necessitates a controlled environment where sterile soil trays and a light layer of growing medium provide the exact balance of moisture retention and light penetration. Within a few days, the first green shoots emerge, and the transition to the next level begins as they grow steadily for 4 to 6 weeks. The seedlings move from the greenhouse to the fields once they reach a height of 7 9/10 inches. On high-end farms in the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua, workers perform the transplanting entirely by hand to ensure the delicate root systems are not compromised. One can notice how each plant is placed in perfectly straight rows in loose, aerated soil with spacing measured down to a single hand's width. This specific distance prevents leaf overlap and allows the roots to anchor deeply into the earth. It gets more complex further on. Because the young plants are susceptible to heat stress, the planting schedule is restricted strictly to the early morning hours. The sunlight remains gentle at this time, and the high humidity keeps the soil soft for easier root penetration. Once established, the cultivation enters a growth control phase lasting 6 to 8 weeks. One can notice how growers inspect leaf color and stem firmness daily, adjusting irrigation through either drip systems or manual watering depending on the specific terrain. This is not the limit of the labor required. It seems simple to let the plant grow naturally, but in reality, the emergence of pale purple flower buds signals the need for human intervention. When the plants reach 3 9/10 to 4 9/10 feet, laborers perform a process called topping. This involves the manual removal of the upper tip before the flowers can bloom. The action redirects the biological energy of the plant away from reproduction and concentrates it entirely into the development of the leaves. Simultaneously, lateral shoots are pruned to prevent nutrient dispersion, ensuring the remaining foliage matures with total uniformity. Harvesting commences only after the stalk grows beyond 4 9/10 feet. The process is only gaining momentum as the harvest unfolds leaf by leaf over a period exceeding 1 month. Unlike industrial methods where machines cut down entire plants in minutes, premium tobacco is harvested in stages. After each picking round, the plant remains standing in the field so the remaining tiers can continue to ripen. Each layer of the plant possesses a unique nicotine content, aroma, and physical thickness. One can notice the first leaves being removed from the lowest section, known as the volado. These thin, lightweight leaves burn with high efficiency and serve as the combustion base for the filler. Approximately 1 week later, the middle section produces the viso leaves. These are thicker and more elastic, providing a necessary balance between structural integrity and aromatic profile. The final stage of the harvest focuses on the liguero. The liguero leaves are the topmost foliage, characterized by a high concentration of essential oils and nicotine resulting from maximum sun exposure. Because of their intensity, these leaves are placed deep within the core of the cigar to provide body and a long finish. Every single leaf must remain intact and unbruised during this manual extraction. The process concludes this phase, ensuring that only perfectly ripened material moves forward to the curing barns. 30 to 45 days is the precise duration required for the initial phase of tobacco curing to reach completion. Why avoid industrial drying machines in favor of traditional wooden barns? At first glance, mechanical heating seems more efficient, but in reality, the leaves require a slow biological transformation that only natural airflow can provide. Each individual leaf is folded at the stem and suspended over horizontal wooden poles that stretch from one wall of the barn to the other. Depending on the specific variety and the intended flavor profile, specialists select between air, sun, heat, or smoke curing methods. The equipment gradually facilitates a deep chemical change within the plant tissue. One can notice how the chlorophyll breaks down, while complex aromatic compounds begin to emerge from the fibers. The process is only gaining momentum, It is remarkable how the scent inside the structure shifts day by day, as the raw, grassy sharpness and acidic notes of the early stage vanish. As the weeks pass, the rows of hanging leaves, resembling a sprawling organic web, release a much softer and sweeter aroma. 10% is the maximum deviation allowed in the final moisture content of the leaf. The camera glides along the rows, where green turns to yellow and finally to a deep copper-brown tone. Experienced workers do not rely on digital instruments, choosing instead to test the readiness of the batch by touch and scent. Humidity and airflow are manually regulated by opening or closing the wooden windows lining the walls. But this is just the beginning. A delayed adjustment of only a few hours can cause an entire batch to develop white mold or become so brittle that it crumbles into dust. Once the leaves reach the necessary level of flexibility, they are gathered into large piles known as pylons. It seems like a simple stacking process, but in reality, the leaves must compress under their own weight to initiate natural fermentation. Workers insert a hollow metal tube deep into the center of each pile to monitor the internal state. Inside the pylon, the temperature begins to rise as a result of intense biological reactions. 122 degrees Fahrenheit is the critical threshold that must never be exceeded during this phase. If the heat rises further, the entire stack is dismantled, turned by hand, and rebuilt to cool the core. This labor-intensive procedure is repeated 3 to 5 times over the fermentation cycle. For thick, oil-rich leaves like the Ligero variety, this stage can last up to 6 weeks. Thinner varieties, such as Viso or Velado, require a shorter period of approximately 3 to 4 weeks. Transition to the next level. Master craftsmen begin the manual sorting phase once the first fermentation stage is finished. Individual bundles are taken apart and spread across large tables to be examined one leaf at a time. Each unit is evaluated based on its position on the plant, its thickness, oil content, color, and vein structure. From there, the material is separated into 3 distinct roles: the filler for the inner core, the binder for structural integrity, and the wrapper for the outermost layer. 35 to 50 leaves are regrouped into new bundles once the sorting is finalized. These are tied with natural fiber cords and moved into specialized storage rooms for further stabilization. Some premium producers label every bundle by harvest year and growing region to preserve traceability for the years ahead. It gets more complex further on. Before blending can occur, the central stem must be removed to ensure an even burn. Because a dry leaf would shatter during this process, the bundles must first undergo rehumidification. Each bundle is placed inside a controlled room or covered with damp cloths for 12 to 24 hours. Once the leaves reach the proper level of softness, workers pull gently along the length of the leaf to separate the stem from base to tip. For wrappers and binders, the stem is removed completely to ensure a seamless surface. For filler leaves, only the lower portion is taken out, leaving a small structural core that helps extend the overall smoking time. 10 years is the duration that some premium wrapper leaves remain in aging rooms before they are ever utilized. The leaf bundles are compactly tied and stacked, where time itself becomes the primary ingredient. Each bundle is meticulously labeled with the variety, plant position, and the exact date the aging began. Once the aging process is complete, the material is ready for the master blenders. Everything only gets more complicated. These specialists reevaluate every aged leaf to create a formula where different components complement one another. Some leaves are chosen to sustain combustion, while others shape the aroma or add depth and warmth. The most experienced blenders can detect these subtle differences through the lightest touch of their fingertips. Once the formula is finalized, the shaping of the cigar begins with the filler. Each leaf is rolled into a loose spiral to form a soft core that allows smoke to flow smoothly. A thicker, more elastic binder leaf is then wrapped around this core to hold the structure together. The binder is applied by hand and gently pressed in a spiral motion from bottom to top to eliminate gaps. Next, the cigar is placed into a wooden press mold, typically containing 6 to 8 grooves for several tens of minutes. The roller must work with extreme finesse when the cigar is passed to the wrapper table. One can notice how every seam is concealed and each turn is smoothed while preserving the natural elasticity of the leaf. At the final step, the head is trimmed and a drop of vegetable-based adhesive seals the construction. For a skilled artisan, this entire sequence takes only 2 to 5 minutes, though the training takes years. Manual quality inspection is the final barrier before packaging can occur. The inspector rotates the cigar under focused light, checking for uniform color and the absence of creases or tears. The body is then lightly pressed along its length to ensure the filler is evenly distributed without hollow spots. After inspection, the cigars are set aside for additional aging, lasting from several weeks to several months. Cedar wood boxes are selected for the final packaging to help retain humidity and preserve the natural aroma. Each cigar is sorted by size and wrapper color before being placed into these protective containers. High-end lines are sealed with official bands and may include certificates listing the batch number and the specific roller. The material is ready to move to the next processing phase without haste. "100% of a cigar box represents more than the sum of its raw materials, serving instead as a physical vessel for history and the technical pride of its creators." Why do artisans dedicate decades to mastering the manipulation of a single organic leaf? At first glance, the assembly of tobacco seems like a simple mechanical task. But in reality, the structural integrity of the cylinder depends on a specific geometric arrangement of internal layers that ensure an even burn and consistent airflow. This is just the beginning. Generations of workers have refined the physical motions of hand rolling into a repeatable industrial science. It is visible how the artisan applies precise pressure with the palms to consolidate the filler leaves without crushing the delicate veins. The process is only gaining momentum as the binder leaf is tensioned around the core. One can notice how the equipment remains minimal, as the human hand remains the most sensitive instrument for detecting density variations in the tobacco. It only looks obvious to wrap a leaf, but in reality, the angle of the overlap determines the draw resistance experienced during use. Each movement of the wooden board and the sharp steel blade follows a trajectory established by centuries of trial and error. Everything only gets more complicated when the final wrapper leaf is applied. The camera glides along the rows of finished cylinders where the texture of the outer leaf must be perfectly smooth and free of physical defects. This creates a ritualistic experience that demands an unhurried pace and total immersion in the physical characteristics of the product. The transformation from a raw agricultural harvest into a calibrated tool for a personal sensory ritual is complete. The final stage of the craft concludes as the products are placed into their wooden containers for aging. This phase of production ends as the materials stabilize within the controlled environment of the box.